All right. So our last general session of the day stands between you and lunch. So no pressure, gentlemen. But this is something I mentioned early on that we've never done before. This is our next two presenters are industry-leading IT professionals. They've been in the field for a combined 35 years, so they're not newbies to this. Together, they bring unique perspectives around everything technology and also cybersecurity. I think today they're going to talk about artificial intelligence. You can find their podcast. It's called Off the Wire. Their social media platforms of choice are LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Today's event will actually be recorded, so you can actually go to one of those platforms of choice and watch today's event. But very, very excited to bring up on stage two of North Carolina's finest, and Mr. Tanner Greer and Mr. Anthony Kent. So help me give them a welcome.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, good morning, everybody.
These are
Clearer than the seat that we usually use for
yeah,
this.
these are actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, want to welcome everyone to another episode of Off the Wire. Today we're going to talk a little bit about AI. I'm sure you all are getting bombarded left and right with that, but we do feel it's an important topic, and that's why we're going to cover it. So this one, we loosely titled it Off the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And whether you're looking to build an AI instance or partner with someone, we really think it's important that people embrace it. And we're going to talk about our journey into bringing AI into our cooperatives, and whatever methods we talk about, really just you got to do what's best for your organization.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. Appreciate that. If for those that may not be, may not know our background, we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. So my name's Tanner Greer. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Blue Ridge Energy. We're a cooperative in Northwest North Carolina of about 80,000 meters. And I've been in this role for about 4 years, but I've been at the co-op for almost 17 now. So I've seen a lot of different things. And I think this is really what we want to talk about today is just the next thing that's kind of coming. And we kind of foresee coming out there. And we want to make sure that everyone is really aware and ready to jump in with us.
I told the barber to knock off the gray before I came here. I've got a few more years on Tanner. I've basically been in the industry ever since I got out of the Marines. I started at Applied Technology Solutions, which is now part of Meridian. I was an IT manager at a co-op in Ohio, and then I did a little stint doing some cybersecurity for the DoD, and then I made my way back to the best industry, the co-op industry, and landed at Four County EMC. Been a little over 6 years now.
All right, sounds good. So I think the first thing we want to talk about, and Anthony, you want to start, is why did the AI feel like it just came out of nowhere?
Yeah, a lot of people think AI is new, but it's been around for over 50 years. But really, ChatGPT, it's no secret. That's what brought it to everyone's mind, and it's kind of here to stay. A lot of people think about like comparisons with AI. I would really the only thing I think that has impacted our industry and really the world so much is the internet. And honestly, I think I was about 20 or 21 before I ever got on the internet. And I remember the first time I really seen anyone on it, I remember it was actually when I was in the Marines. I saw some guys in the barracks, and they'd be on like all days of the evening, like either chatting or playing games. And much like you hear people talk about AI today, I was like, this is going to end the world. This is going to be the downfall of mankind, seeing the internet. And I really thought that when I was 20 years old. And anyways, I've since changed my perspective. Obviously, we all use the internet, like it or hate it. We all use technology. But I think AI is going to be a little bit of the same. Down the road, I think it's just going to be something that everyone leverages. And like with technology, obviously like the folks that work in the office, they use it a little bit more, but even our guys out in the field, how many co-ops have linemen that have either iPads or laptops? Now, granted, they can get the lights on without any technology. I promise you that. But how much more efficient and better at their job does it make them?
Yeah, I think a lot of what has happened in the last few years has also been brought on by like the emergence of this great hardware, right? Like we had kind of people working on AI, and as Anthony mentioned, it's gone back 50 years, and they've been designing things, but we really kind of got to this precipice where we finally got the hardware powerful enough and aligned enough to be able to run these models, and so they could take what they had built technology-wise and actually, put those two and two together. And also, I think the chat interface, I think was a big deal. Like when that was actually released as a chat interface to a large language model, I think that's really, kind of what sent things kind of accelerating. So, pursuing AI, right? Why did we decide as Blue Ridge or as Four County to pursue AI? I think it's just like the same decision we made for any other technology. It's just emerging technologies are something that we should pursue as cooperatives, right? We don't want to sit on the sidelines. We don't want to kind of bury our head in the sand and hope something will go away. We know it's here to stay. So let's embrace it. Is that kind of like, in your opinion, Anthony, you feel it was the same for you?
Yeah, it's really, people, you find that there's two perspectives with AI. You've got the people that are all in and are buying everything that they get out of AI. And then you got the people that are just avoiding it like the plague. And really our goal is to just help demystify it. And hopefully you lie somewhere in the middle. We really don't want people blindly trusting everything they get, but we also want people to not put their head in the sand.
Yeah, and I think a real important thing when you get started, no matter what part of the journey you're in, if you haven't jumped off the sidelines or if you're somewhere along the way, making sure you kind of think about your use cases. And if you don't really understand like all the capability, I hope find someone that does understand and help you like work through the things that are pain points for you. That's what we kind of did starting out. We started out looking at our use cases, and really we have about 7, but I'll just talk about the top 3 that we have. Obviously, ChatGPT really just opened the world's eyes to what was possible from a productivity and efficiency standpoint for like an average person. So think of the things like, reworking an email or creating a blog post or all the other types of things that you can do with these generative AI models. So that was definitely use case number 1. We wanted to take advantage of that. We wanted something we do want something that's kind of standardized across the co-op. If you think that you're not doing AI at your co-op, I would ask all your employees, because you probably are, whether or not you think so. Second was really intelligent search. If you look at like all the information we have as co-ops, one of the things that I see is really struggle is just finding something. I asked somebody the other day, I would say, think about what you do in a week-to-week basis. How much of what your job is finding something? Whether that's an email, a document, a piece of information in a policy. There are a lot of our day-to-day is spent just finding stuff that's out there. So that's kind of our next thing is intelligent search. We want to make it where we can ask a question and we can get the answer versus having to go and search for it ourselves. And then really the third one, this is one I'm probably the most excited about, is called simple language query. And in a nutshell, what that is you may have at your co-op someone that's really good with data, really good at reporting. Maybe you have an analyst that you've hired that's been really popular the last few years. What they're doing is really kind of in a way what simple language query is. They are listening to what you tell them what you want, and they are translating that into something that a database can understand. All right. And so we want to basically empower that to be a lot faster, a lot more productive. So we want to talk to our data. We have all these data sets. Anthony's going to talk about SCADA data here in a little bit. But for example, let's just say we use our account data. I want to be able to ask a simple question like, how many accounts use this rate and are in this district and pay by cash, and get an answer? And that's something that is really, we're on the precipice of now, being able to actually have a conversation back and forth with our data. And so really that's our third use case.
So build or buy, cloud versus on-prem, and closed versus open source, like all of these have pluses and minuses. And honestly, the way that we're rolling this out, I would not suggest it for everyone. You really got to base it off of your organization. So both of us decided to build our own local instance. And I'll say this though, like, especially the last 6 months, I'm getting bombarded by vendors looking to try to push AI or offer an AI solution to our cooperative. So there's no shortage of vendors out there that will provide that for you. And then the cloud versus on-prem. I'm a little bit of a techie. I like hardware. Of course, I had a little bit of leaning towards doing something on-prem. But honestly, depending on what you're getting, like these graphics cards, they can range from like $1,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, for the cloud, like you can just lease or rent those graphics cards, and on-prem, you have to own them and pay for them, whether you use them or not. And then the open source versus closed source. So like closed source would be like ChatGPT. Open source would be like Gemma or Llama, which is Google and Facebook or Meta's models that they have out there. But for the closed source models, there's really some pluses right now. They're easier to deploy, and honestly, they do have a little bit of upside over the open source models. Now, if you go back 2 years ago, really like ChatGPT would blow away the open source models, but they've really caught up since then. They're really close. But with the open source models, some of the benefits of it is it's open and you can use it however you want. Like you can customize it and tweak it to meet your needs versus the closed source ones. You really have to leverage, you have to use how they're built and how they're used.
Yeah, and I would say it goes almost on the open source, closed source. It goes a little deeper as well because Anthony kind of mentioned some of these models can get rather large. And at the same time, there are models that are tiny. I mean, there are models that are so small that they want to be able to put them on the devices you're holding in your hands. But at the same time, the models you typically might have used if you've used ChatGPT, those are large, large models and not something that really can average. Honestly, I don't even think any co-op really could scale to the size of maybe some of those. But there are some in-betweens, and that's what we're starting to use and to test with the open source. So I think in the past, when people said open source software, we kind of felt like we could always run it. If it's open source and free and available, we can use it. But there is a situation with some of these where it could be open source and available to you, and you can't actually run it. A little bit different than maybe what we've been used to in the past. Internet connectivity with an AI model or with an AI platform is something you need to think about. I know a lot of co-ops are using Copilot. I've heard that a lot. It's easy. It's just an additional license on top of your Microsoft licensing you do. And while Copilot allows you to kind of put some guardrails around your data and what you allow it to do, you really have to read the fine print. We're going to talk a little bit more about privacy a little bit later, but you really got to read the fine print on when it's connected to the internet, what it does and how that works. So if you connect a model or an AI instance to the internet, it's a really great thing. It can find information that's maybe not in the model. These models, they're very hard to train. They take a lot of resources, so they don't do this on a nightly basis. So when you ask, let's say ChatGPT a question, maybe who won a ball game last night, it's actually going out and actually finding that information because it doesn't necessarily know it right away. That's good. I mean, we like current information, but in reality, when you type in that, if it doesn't know it distinctly and it has to send it to someone else, it's actually transporting that and, using a different service to grab that. So whether or not you're going to connect to the internet is really a privacy question that you can have, obviously internally or with a vendor in that regard. And then trusted versus untrusted, like it or not, there are a lot of really good models coming from some untrusted places. China's really leading the way. There are a lot of open source models coming out of China. Are they trustworthy? Not for us. That's not something we're going to do yet, but they're making progress as well. And they're pushing the more trusted developers even harder than they were. So for us, we're going to stick with trusted developers and some of the big names like Meta, OpenAI, there's Google that makes their product. There's other ones as well, Anthropic, some of these large trusted AI players. That's where we're going to, put our work and effort, but not to say there aren't other models out there, not from those folks.
So this is our AI server. You'll see on the top. Before I get started, I'm going to quote Doug Kernicki. He's someone at our cooperative. He's got a saying that I like to say as well now. We had champagne taste, but we had beer money. So we had I remember when I first started digging into this, I got told by people that I know and respect, and they're like, it's not feasible for a co-op to buy an AI server, a local AI server. And come to find out, you can. So with this server at the top, we've got, and I'm not a gamer, so I didn't know anything about graphics cards until I started digging into AI. But at the top, we've got 4 3090 graphics cards. I got them refurbished off of Amazon. The motherboard, the RAM, the CPU, I got it used off of eBay. Pretty much the only thing that was new was the power supply, the hard drive, and that frame that it's all in. And anyways, just want to showcase, if you're really wanting to get into this, you can do it at a lower cost. It does cost a little bit, but it's not going to break the bank. But I will say this, this is kind of like a proof of concept, and we can do a lot with this server, even be low budget. But, if we start using this, in an enterprise and are leveraging it every day and rely upon it, we may look at upgrading the hardware. And then I took a screenshot of one of our chat clients. We've got several large language models, and this one is called the Humanized Chatbot. And for this one, I might be the only one, and hopefully I don't out anyone, but a lot of times you go on social media, and you can just see within 5 seconds that ChatGPT wrote something. You see the little icons and just kind of read it. And also, I kind of check out when I see that. I'm not saying there's not good data there, but I don't know. It's just one of those things where I kind of check out. So this one, I actually took some of the information from Reddit. There were some college kids that did some prompt training to basically get AI to be able to pass for not being AI. So I think kids were trying to cheat at school. I actually leveraged some of it. I went through all the code or the prompt that they had and took what I liked out of it and then added some stuff, that we wanted in there. But anyways, when you look at it and when it responds, it really does sound quite like a human talking instead of AI.
Yeah, and we kind of did a little bit different route. We were able, thankful, we asked our board for a little bit of money to kind of do some R&D into this. So we purchased kind of a purpose-built AI server from Dell, and they come in a lot of different flavors. And like Anthony, and I think this is going to be a common theme as we talk today, is like we're still figuring out where we're going, right? AI stuff is changing so fast. I don't think you can make a definitive statement today and then know for 100% sure that you're going to be doing exactly that in a couple years. It is really that fast. But you can basically see there, other than it just looks like a regular server, other than it has a couple graphics cards. And our model, or the open source model that we're running, we've nicknamed Brianna, just because our initials to our co-op at Blue Ridge Energy. And so far we have about 20 users. Most of those are still in beta, but we have about 20 users that are hitting this on a regular basis now, doing things from creating blog posts or reworking websites, doing emails. We actually had someone use it to help them make an email to a member that was going to help them save money and basically give them all kinds of tips, right? And make it sound like it was like something that like they created versus, taking hours and hours to spend versus just a few minutes. So we're really excited about this. We're also trying cloud options as well. We've done some testing with Copilot, and we're really open to anything. I think you really have to be at this point because things are just, the sands are shifting so heavily.
So on this, I actually took a screenshot. We're using a open source tool called N8N, and it allows you to do workflows and automation that's really kind of point and click. And besides being an AI junkie, I'm a little bit of a Salesforce junkie. Adam and Nicole, they came to our co-op and talked to us about, how we could leverage Salesforce. And honestly, we've hit the ground running since we've had it. I think it's been going on about 2 years now, and we've really transformed a lot of processes from our vehicle inspections to the vehicle maintenance. We've got our performance reviews, our energy audits. Like, we've got several processes that were antiquated and on paper. And I know as cooperatives, we all have these 30-year-old processes that we'd like to revamp. And anyways, we leveraged Salesforce, but AI is like going to take it to the next level. Imagine the things that we can automate and streamline with AI.
Yeah, and a lot of times I present to our board and to our CEO, and I get this question asked a lot, which is like, are we training our own models? And honestly, I might be, might go against what Anthony, said a little bit earlier, but I think when you train a model, it is something maybe out of scope for something you could actually have like at your co-op. It takes about 10 times the resources to train a model as it does to actually run the model. So, and when I say training, basically what you're doing is you're providing the model additional data. You're actually having it have outputs, and you're kind of grading those. That is the right answer. This is the wrong answer. That is, over and over. Obviously, this is very simplified, and it's much more automated. They don't train these models every day. I mean, it's like a month's process. For example, Meta, they release a model about once a year, like a brand new model. So it is something that the average, I think, co-op might have a tough time now. In the cloud, as Anthony mentioned earlier, you can rent things. And so if that's something you want to do, definitely work with either, yourself or work with a partner that could help you do that. Training the model with your data is the most powerful way and quickest way to really have it leverage everything that you have to offer. Now, there are other ways, though. The one good thing is we don't necessarily have to do training. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can basically provide the model. I'm going to just kind of use another term, like an appendix of data that you have. And this could be PDFs per se, Word documents, data sets of any sort. And you can have it basically use what's in the model when it answers and also reference your appendix. That's kind of one way to go about it. And also, as I mentioned, most of these models, they want to use current information. So there's a way where you can interconnect your model into other sources of data. So if you need to pull that quick information as well. So you don't have to train a model to be able to get your data, have answers based on your data out of it. So at the moment, that's not something we're doing. And maybe we'll do that in the future, but as of right now, we're kind of looking at those other methods to integrate our data into it.
Goals for next year, really just initially what we're looking to do is basically combine AI with some of our documentation. Even our policies, sadly, I'm going to fess something up. Our travel policy is so complex and hard to understand that we had to have HR basically simplify it and send out an email to help explain it. How great would it be to have AI be able to ask questions against your policies? and then your work procedures, your bylaws. And honestly, I would like to see it be able to scrape our website and be able to answer any question off of our website. So I think there's a lot of power there. And then going 1 to 3 years out, that's where I want to look at the workflows and the automations and try to leverage it and try to get more out of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with Anthony. We've done some testing, and I'm really, really excited about having, kind of an empowered knowledge base at Blue Ridge, because even just a little bit of testing we've done with some of our policies, it's really incredible. Think of like a new employee, all right? A new employee just got there, and you just like slam them with everything. Here's the policy on this. Here's how to take vacation. Here's when you can use sick time. Here's whenever FMLA needs to be done. This is when it doesn't need to be done. It's overwhelming, but just doing some testing and being able to upload like our vacation policy, for example, and just say, I've been here 4 years. How many days of vacation will I have next year? And have it just put a number out. It's just amazing compared to like finding the policy, reading through the policy, trying to understand the policy, and taking really probably 5 to 10 times longer. So that's kind of where we're headed to. We wanted to first replace, or at least try to see if we could replace these kind of public cloud free offerings, these free accounts with ChatGPT or Google or others. They're free for a reason. So we wanted to make sure we had some sort of platform. But like Anthony said, that's where we're really excited for, is when we kind of get to these more advanced use cases and AI agents, as Anthony mentioned, to do some of that automation. We've been doing automation for about 10 years at our co-op, really in a big way. And I think a lot of people get worried when you say automation that like there's going to be less work to have. And I think that's just not really the case. Like, I know we have some of our folks here sitting up front. Every one of us has a giant list of the things we cannot get done on a day-to-day basis, right? So we want to get to some of that stuff. And so that's where we are looking to, empower us with this automation in the next few years. Realistically, I want to be realistic. I think some things are going to be quicker than we think, and some things are going to be tougher and more onerous than we think. So I think, kind of like Anthony mentioned, we're going to land somewhere in the middle. In some ways, we'll jump way ahead, and then we'll be held back in some regard. But we're really, like I said, we're on the journey, and we're just excited about where we're.
So what about hallucinations? Honestly, this word makes me cringe. It actually set me back probably about 3 or 4 months on our AI project. So initially we had a large language model up, and I had, embedded our policies on it and a few other documents, and it was able to answer questions with ease. And then I uploaded some of our SCADA data in a spreadsheet. So I got some information from engineering, uploaded it. And basically, we've got 30 substations, and it was talking about the phasing, the load that they had on each circuit. And I asked the question, I said, which substation has the worst power factor? And it came back and it says, your Elizabethtown substation has the worst power factor. And that may all sound all great and dandy, but we don't have an Elizabethtown substation. We have an Elizabethtown district, but not a substation. So I said, we do not have an Elizabethtown substation. Please only reference the data that we have. And so it would come back and it would say, I apologize. I will only reference the data that you have uploaded. And then so I would ask it again and again and again. And no matter how I tweaked the question, it kept coming back with that Elizabethtown substation. In its defense, I do think the substations that were in that district had the worst power factor just glancing at it, but could not get it to answer right. And so honestly, we went back and, it's like learning a whole new language. Like there's AI, and then there's all the tools that really you need to couple with it to make it more powerful. And that's why we end up going to rebuild it. And then for concerns, there's definitely some concerns with AI. One thing is right now, like when you train it, or not even train it, if you embed your documentation and ask questions against it, they're seeing I would say probably about the highest is about 90% that it actually answers your question. And that sounds fine and dandy for some things, but if you got it for your members, is 90% enough? It depends on what you're asking. If you're asking about pay or their bill or something like that, that's not going to be enough. So that's a little bit of a concern. And then I would say the other big concern is what we talked about earlier, is just people blindly trusting it. If you're leveraging AI, you really need to vouch and know what you're getting out of it and verify it. It's kind of on you. That's a big concern. And then I would say this, on top of all that, I think the biggest concern I have is people just putting their head in the sand and not embracing the technology.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there are people on both ends of the spectrum. I went and had a discussion with some of our field districts just recently, and I talked to them and asked them, like, what do you think about AI? And some of them were saying, I'm afraid to use it. So you've really got that end of the spectrum. And then you have some people who basically are going to take whatever it says and put it in whatever type of documentation or email or whatever and just run with it. And you really need to land somewhere in the middle. I think a lot of people think that you can take AI and you can take someone who has like almost no skill set in an area and, make them into whatever you need them to be. And while you can definitely enhance them, you do need some sort of skill set to at least be able to check and kind of make sure that like the things that it's putting. And we actually, in our AI policy recently, we put in a little addendum for responsibility at work just because of that people, if you're going to use an AI tool, even the tool we provide or any tool, you need to be responsible for what you put out there. So I want to talk about some like misconceptions that kind of we've come across as we've been going on this journey that we thought might be useful to everyone. We talked about integrating the data. That sounds pretty easy. One misconception that I put on there is it's not as easy as it looks. Like we thought it was going to be easier. Sometimes it's tougher. One thing we found is like when you think of your data, right, whether that's member data or meter data or whatever, there's a lot of missing context, right? You know a lot about it. You can look at a field and whatever it says and whatever numbers in that field, and you know exactly what that means. But just because you know what it means doesn't mean, that an AI model is going to be able to, right? That maybe doesn't have that context. Or there's a certain way that like data goes together that maybe the model doesn't know. So in some ways it's easier than we think, but in a lot of ways it's been tougher than we thought. And another thing that's kind of come up is we've been going through a huge time of retirements at our co-op. We have about 105 new employees in the last 5 years, out of about 230, including our subsidiary. So almost half of our employees are 5 years or less. And I hear this saying a lot, and I'm sure you all have heard it as well, is there's a lot of knowledge walking out the door. Anyone ever heard that? Is it just me? We say it almost at every retirement thing that we have. And my second follow-up question is, how are we getting that knowledge? Like it is walking out the door. How much of the knowledge and the context to what we do is really in our heads? Someone says, hey, how do you do this thing? And they're like, ask Susie, she'll know. But there's no like documentation. Susie just knows, and she's the one that answers it for everyone at the co-op. AI models can't, at least now, and hopefully not ever, but they can't get into our brain and like pull that information out. So if you don't have that knowledge written down, that's walking out the door in our case, or in general, just that contextual knowledge that it takes to run an electric utility. If it's not down in like some sort of knowledge base or in some sort of documentation, then how are you ever going to really have an AI model empower that kind of data? I think another misconception is that everyone thinks they're going to pick one model and that's it. Like, okay, we've decided we love OpenAI's products and we're going to use ChatGPT and all right, we're done. We've got our AI strategy down. In reality, what we're learning is there's going to be multiple models. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 30 to 40 models that we used in different capacities in the next 5 years. Some models are better at certain things. Some models are better at calculation. Some models are better at reasoning. Some models are better at determining, from what someone types, what they need. And you have to use those models in different ways. As we grow and as our strategy around AI kind of gets a little bit bigger, there's going to be a lot of different models. So I don't think you're going to like pick one and be done. That's not really accurate. AI models, and kind of speaking of accuracy, they're not always accurate. I think a lot of people think that just because this has been trained on a huge subset of information, huge subset of the knowledge of really generally humans, that everything it says is going to be accurate. I remember I went to a conference, I think it was Tech Advantage this year, and they were kind of doing what we're doing, kind of going through the journey. And they had asked, I think the amount of current that a 24 gauge wire could handle. And it said it was like 300 amps, which anyone that might be electrically inclined in the room, that cable would burn into immediately with 300 amps. So you have to have that check. And at least right now, and that may change in the future, there still is a lot of accuracy concerns. Bias and anchoring. All these models are going to have a built-in bias. No matter whether they're an open source model, a closed source model, or what company you use, there is going to be some bias, not necessarily a bad thing, just that you understand that there is a bias in there, right? And anchoring is something that we've seen a lot in our journey is that models tend to want to go with their first answer. Like as you're kind of asking them questions and probing, and kind of to Anthony's point about that substation, once it feels like it's determined the right answer, even if you start having a different conversation or changing the subject, it still wants to relate back. So we've been actually training people and showing them you actually need to start, every conversation needs to be kind of a new interaction with the model. And that's helped in some ways. And then I think for the technical people out here, at least for me, I can't speak for everybody on our IT team, but I thought maybe some of the stuff that I knew before would translate, but it's almost like a whole nother language. There's so many terms around AI, especially when you get into the technical back end. You almost have to learn. I mean, I'm looking up stuff constantly on like, what does this mean? What does that mean? And actually, just got told recently there was a standard that everybody that was like developing these models was using, and it was the gold standard. Everybody was going to do it. Within 6 months, it got completely deprecated and gone. So that's kind of the learning environment that really like entire AI industry is in. Is something could be the standard and 6 months later be gone. That is how fast things are moving. So those are kind of just misconceptions that we've kind of learned down the way. And then just wanted to talk a little bit about data privacy. There's some huge data privacy concerns. I talked about that earlier. Read the fine print of whatever you decide to do, whether that's something you do yourself. And that's actually one of the reasons we tried to run a model locally, is because we wanted to kind of test in something where we didn't feel like there was all those data privacy concerns. We've told the people that are doing beta tests with us to, use this freely. If you need to put someone's name, if you need to put their titles or how the organization works. And you think like everyone always thinks of social security numbers or something like really, really bad as bad information to put into a model. But what about just how you approve invoices? That's not maybe a good thing to have in a public model. If you put in like, hey, so-and-so approves invoices and I need to write her an email to like do something, now that model may have that. And if someone else is trying to do research out of that model, they may be able to figure out how you approve invoices and maybe even try to compromise you later down the road. I think there was a Samsung phone that they were actually building the source code to the phone, and someone accidentally put that into one of those public models, and it actually got leaked out to a competitor. So the actual, I mean, this is a competitive advantage. They were having this super secret phone, and now it's out there to their competitor. So you really do got to be careful with data privacy. It's kind of something you need to think about maybe even before you get into it.
All right, a question we hear a lot, is this going to impact my job? And I would say absolutely. I think really just all people are going to have this impact them. And I think immediately I would just look at it like this. So co-ops, we all run lean. We all want to do more. And this is going to be something that's going to be to help us out. It's kind of like a force multiplier. Imagine just like technology, if we went to, started using computers and all that technology, like how archaic and how many people would we have to do what we do now? And another thing is a concern. It's not so much in the US, but it's still a concern, is there's not as many young people replacing the older generations that are up and coming and retiring. And so with that, are we even going to have enough people to fill all these positions and these jobs that are going to be out there? And that's something I think where we can use AI and kind of leverage and kind of solve that issue.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I would say I don't see it, and I tell people at our co-op that I don't see it as a job replacement. I describe it as kind of an exoskeleton, right? You might have seen that if you've seen any of the videos of the like military testing exoskeletons, but AI is just going to really help us run faster, run longer, jump higher, lift higher, stronger, heavier things there. And that's where I kind of see it, is like, to Anthony's point, just something that's going to enhance what we do so that we can get to those tasks. There's a lot of tasks, like I said, that's just been sitting on a list. Like, man, it'd be really nice if we could do this one day. It just hasn't been done. And I think as co-ops, we're really set up for this because we run lean. Because we run lean, now all of a sudden we can get a lot more done, and we don't feel like, we have to make any type of employee, decisions or anything like that. Like some of these big companies, they scaled way up with employees, and now, they're maybe using an AI tool. So they don't feel like they either need that or they don't need to hire as many. We're so lean that I think we're in a really prime position for this.
I did forget one thing on that. I don't want to make it peaches and cream. Like, it will impact some jobs. And one that I've kind of noticed is really cybersecurity. I mean, I'm sure all of us a year ago were hearing the news, there's a shortage of cybersecurity professionals. Well, if you look today, I know countless people that are cybersecurity professionals that are out there looking for a job. Now, some of it is because of outsourcing overseas, but some of it is because of AI, where, for like a security operations center, like how much more efficient they are leveraging AI. And I'll give you an example. We had an issue where we had a computer that was reaching out to a Russian IP address, and we basically had this huge log file, and we went and we're searching through it, and I had two people looking through this log file, and about 30 minutes, they couldn't find out, who the offending computer was. And then so I uploaded it to our large language model, and within like 90 seconds, it had who it was. Now, granted, I went to that log file and I vouched and verified that it was actually accurate, and it sure was. And so like these, there's other technologies out there that they will be impacted by this, but there's going to be other openings and jobs that it creates. So the last thing is, if we could wave a magic wand, what would you like to see AI do at our co-op? I'm going to flip it a little bit. The first thing I would like to see is just people embrace it. I mean, I know all of us have people at our co-op where we got people that don't embrace technology today. So I'd really like to see them embrace this. And the reason being is we do a lot of great things. One thing at Four County that we do that I'm super proud of is we do a lot of economic development. We've created a lot of jobs over the years with the economic development we've had. And if we had more time, we could do more focus and effort on that and maybe even do more than what we're doing now. And then the other thing is people say AI they think that we're just going to automate things and, we're never going to talk to the members again. We're cooperatives. We're not going to do that. But what I think it can do is some of these trivial tasks that we have, help streamline and automate them. That way we can have better conversations and more meaningful conversations with our members.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right along with Anthony on this one. Something I'm really passionate about is strategic thinking, and we try to run our co-op that way. We try to plan and operate our co-op via strategy. And I think that strategic thinking can come from any level of the co-op. It doesn't necessarily have to only come from leadership. It can come from the most entry-level job. And so what I see, what I hope that magic wand is that we can make some of these operational tasks go away, so that we can take our people and our awesome folks that we have and we can point them toward more strategic thinking. I was talking with our team the other day and I said, how much time do we have just to think? I mean, when's the last time you remember maybe just taking 30 minutes and actually being able to just ponder something? It seems like we're so busy that we don't have time. And sometimes those times of just sitting back, thinking a little bit, kind of taking a pause or a break can be one of those times when you get a great idea. I think Google Android's maybe the best example of this. So Google would allow their employees to have a little bit of time to work on a project. Just, it has to be a kind of a technology project, but, whatever, take a little bit of time, take time away from your regular work and work on this. And they actually came up with Android out of that. And now, of course, Android is a hugely popular mobile operating system. So I think having a little more time to be strategic in our thinking, to maybe just think about what we could improve, versus just pounding down a list of stuff that we got to get done, and that just being our daily workflow. That's really where I see it. So I mean, Anthony, what are you thinking? Any final thoughts from your perspective on where you guys are headed and just AI in general?
Yeah, the big thing is, I know not everyone's got the staff and the people to do it. So it's really just out there, either partner with Meridian or partner with other vendors and try to leverage this. I mean, we all want to be better co-ops and want to do more with less. And I think this is something that we can all leverage to make us better.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think the thing I would want everyone to take away from our podcast today is that you can't sit on the sidelines. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter if this is the first time you've ever heard about AI. I doubt that's anyone in the room, but if today's the first time, you need to take that step. Go back to your co-op, talk with those folks, and figure out how you're going to be able to integrate this, because ultimately, whether you like it or not, I mean, the vendors are going to be integrated in there for you. I mean, Anthony talked about that earlier. I get calls every day, and everyone, I know it's the buzzword of the day. Everyone wants to have some sort of little AI tool, every vendor now. And so thinking you're going to just not have to hear about it for a few years, it's just something that we don't want to see people take away. So, but we knew in this format, we thought it being a podcast, we wouldn't really be able to take questions. So one thing we were thinking is if you have any questions for us, we're not necessarily the expert in every single thing, but we'll do our best. We're gonna just kind of hang out after the podcast ends. But Anthony, you want to tell them where they can find us?
Yeah, so we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, anywhere you can find us, or anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can find us on that. And we release episodes every other week, and really we're talking about technology, security, and communications and leadership when it comes to technology. So if you want to check out more, be sure to tune in. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.